Hi, I'm Lila, and yep, that's me in the front row of a gala, seconds before I betrayed my best friend and almost ruined his life. But before we get to all that high-stakes drama, please make sure to like and subscribe to follow my chaotic journey. Ever since I was little, I've been a lot to handle, or at least, that's what I've been told by every adult in my life. But really, I'm just always trying to do the right thing, and sometimes that gets me in trouble, which is why my parents sent me to Woodmere Academy. My parents argued that it was only the 5th-ranked preparatory school, but no one else would take me despite their money. My father, the CEO, asked how I would replace him at Adresi Tech if I kept up with these morality plays. Woodmere was supposedly elite, but to me, it was just like every other rich kid's cesspool my parents plopped me into. It was complete with snobby, entitled lookalikes who wore the same navy blazer and walked the halls like the world owed them a standing ovation. A bully named Milo sneered at a scholarship student, saying, "You think you belong here? You're just a poor, worthless." I stepped in and said, "Funny you think he doesn't belong here, when your dad basically had to donate a wing to get your sorry butt in here." The scholarship kid ran away, but Milo's ego stood its ground as he threatened, "You're going to regret that because my family runs this school." "Cool, but are you waterproof, huh?" I asked as I bent down and turned the knob on a nearby sprinkler aimed straight at him. Water sprayed all over Milo, soaking him completely while some other kids watching us laughed at his expense. 15 minutes later, I found myself in a familiar place, the headmaster's office, facing an angry administrator. "Do you think drenching a student with irrigation equipment is leadership material, Miss Adresi?" he asked sternly. "I don't think threatening a kid with a lacrosse stick is exactly student of the month behavior either," I retorted. The headmaster revealed that the student of the month was his grandson, which explained why I was being expelled, not just suspended. I begged, "Wait, no, please, if I get expelled, my parents will actually disown me because I'm supposed to be the next CEO." As the school door slammed shut behind me, along with my future, I did the only thing a girl with no options could do. I walked home. Every step toward my house was basically a countdown to whatever fresh nightmare my parents had waiting for me. When I arrived, my parents immediately told me to pack my bags, revealing they already knew about the expulsion. My mother said, "You bet we do, but you got accepted to Adventa Academy," which confused me completely. It's the #1 school in the country, and looks like they changed their mind, my dad explained while checking his watch. Apparently, we were leaving that night, with no time to overthink or sabotage it, just a suitcase and a second chance. When we got there, my jaw almost dropped because Adventa made every other fancy school look like a daycare run by raccoons. I waved goodbye to Mom and Dad and approached the doors with a fresh start in mind and a promise in my heart. But as soon as I walked through the doors, the intercom announced, "Ila Edrisi," to the headmaster's office, immediately. I braced myself as I entered the headmaster's office, expecting trouble, but Headmaster Quinland was actually smiling. "Don't worry, you're not in trouble yet. We brought you here for a very specific reason, let's call it an assignment, he said. He explained the assignment required my particular talents, quick thinking, initiative, and a healthy disregard for rules. He kept going on about a top-secret mission to follow someone with as little contact as possible and await instructions. Then he slid a manila envelope across the desk, like we were in some low-budget spy movie, and I expected a photo of a criminal. But nope, it was Louis Bloch, a kid so aggressively average he practically faded into the folder, scrawny with brown hair. My mission was to follow Louis, so I did, and at first, everything about him was even more ordinary than I expected. He was the quietest kid in class, didn't eat with anyone, and his locker code was basically 1 2 3 4. But because he was allergic to attention, he turned out to be weirdly hard to follow without being noticed. In all that solo stealth mode, there was exactly one group activity where he appeared to be somewhat comfortable, the chess club. It was a place so mind-numbingly dull that it made math class feel like a rock concert, but I had to watch him. I watched as Louis moved a pawn, then another pawn, then the horse won, while I tried to stay awake. Then his opponent leaned back, grinning like he just solved world hunger, and taunted, "Check me again." The bully sneered, "Well, Louis, did you just come here to be reminded about what a loser you are?" My brain screamed at me to stay out of it and observe, but my instincts stood up and took over. I interjected, "Did you just come here to forget that your mom cut your hair with a weed whacker?" Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Louis do something I hadn't seen him do all week. He smiled. After the 3-hour chess club ended, I felt a tap on my shoulder, and when I turned around, it was him. "Hey, thanks," he said quietly, and just like that, we started chatting about things that felt surprisingly normal. We realized we had a lot in common, specifically the immense pressure our parents put on our futures. As we talked more often, I noticed Louis had a knack for expressing himself in a way that was poetic and magnetic. He described birds sharing crumbs like it was beautiful, and I realized my observe and report strategy was crumbling. I told myself I was keeping things professional, but the truth was we were becoming real friends. He was also weirdly funny, in that dry, blink and you miss it way, and he could quote MSA videos like they were Shakespeare, which is a wildly underrated skill. "Why don't they teach those videos in school?" he asked, and I replied, "I know, right? Appreciating our shared niche humor." Then one afternoon, I saw him slip into a place I didn't even know students were allowed into, the old theater, specifically the backstage loft. I waited for a moment to make sure the coast was clear, then crept in after him, moving silently through the dust and shadows. And that's when I saw it, Louis, alone, tucked into the shadows, with a battered violin under his chin, playing. But he wasn't just playing, he was humming too, a soft, steady note that floated above the strings like it was made of air and magic. It was beautiful, like you make your heart hurt kind of beautiful, and then, before I even knew what was happening, I was crying. At music and me, who knew I could even do that? Unfortunately, he heard my sniffles and looked directly at me. "Oh. I'm so sorry, he said, panicking, and I quickly replied, "What? No, no, don't apologize," wiping my eyes. "No, no. I'm so sorry," he repeated, and before I could say anything else, he bolted like he'd accidentally set the building on fire with a G major chord. I ran after him down the hallway, shouting, "I didn't know you could do that," trying to catch up to his retreating figure. No one does. I mean, they used to. But after what happened with my brother, I stopped. Mostly, he admitted, slowing down. What do you mean, what happened? I asked, sensing we were finally getting to the core of his sadness. I don't know how to explain it, exactly. It's like, when I play, it messes with people. Their emotions. Their insides, he struggled to explain. I don't try to do it. It just happens. He was going through something really hard, and I thought I was helping, he continued softly. I thought if I could just play the right notes, he'd feel better. But he didn't feel better. It just got worse. And then his voice trailed off. My parents sent me here after that. Said I needed a break from too much feeling, whatever that means, he finished, looking down. Suddenly, everything made sense, the quiet, the staring out of windows, the assignment in general. I wasn't just following a weird boy. I was following a boy with a sad vibe and a violin, realizing this was something else, something powerful and broken. Later that week, I got called into the headmaster's office again, and he asked, "Missy, how are things progressing with what?" "Oh, Louis." Yep. He's just a totally normal guy. Nothing to see here. Definitely not emotionally gifted to the point of concern," I lied. "I understand the two of you have become quite close," the headmaster noted, cutting through my deflection with a sharp look. "What? No. I stammered, but he interrupted, "I'm the headmaster, Layla. I know exactly what happens around here." "You do know about the incident involving his brother, right?" "I can't stop," the headmaster said, feigning concern while watching me closely. "He blames himself. He hasn't spoken about it to anyone. His parents tried everything to help him out. Got him the best therapists," he explained. "But we believe his silence is part of the problem. When he plays, he connects. He releases what he's been holding in," Quinlan pressed. "Now, suppressing a gift like his is not healthy, especially when it's tied to guilt. But that's where you come in. You need to help him heal, Isla. There's a gala next month. Nothing flashy, just a showcase of student work. A safe space. If Louis were to play again, it might be the first step back to himself. Convincing the quietest kid in the universe to sing at a fancy fundraiser felt like a daunting task, but I had to try. I found Louis in his usual spot, tucked behind the music building, sitting on a chipped concrete ledge that overlooked the soccer field. Want one? The cafeteria throws them out a day before they expire. Still perfectly fine, just no longer worth the shelf space, he offered a sandwich. Wait, what? That's like a criminal amount of food waste. Someone needs to say, to protest, I said, outraged. You know what? You should join the social activism club. They'd love you, he suggested with a small smile.
Yeah.
Well, not sure I have time for that, given my assignment. Assignments. Like, school assignments, I quickly corrected myself. Anyway, you know what you should join? The roster of performers at the annual gala, I blurted out, pivoting the conversation. Oh, no. He started to refuse immediately, shrinking back into his shell and looking away. Come on. I heard you play yesterday. It was. I tried to encourage him, but he cut me off firmly. I said no, Isla. Sorry. It's just not my thing. I should go, he said, standing up and walking away. But for a while, I kept trying, subtly dropping hints like, isn't it weird how the word gala rhymes with au revoir? But it was hopeless, and I could feel my future as CEO of Adreezy Tech slipping through my fingers with every refusal. I'd already burned through every other school worth mentioning, and the headmaster had made it clear, screw this up, and I was done for good. So, I felt like I had no choice but to do the ultimate betrayal. I signed him up for the gala anyway without his permission. And then, I told the headmaster that Lewis had agreed to play, sealing my fate and his in one signature. Next thing I knew, Lewis wasn't just on the schedule, he was the centerpiece, with his name printed on flyers and announced in assembly. Was it manipulative? Yes. Did I feel bad? Also, yes. But I told myself it was for his own good, right? Unfortunately, he didn't see it that way when he confronted me, asking, "How could you do this to me?" Oh, please. You think just because I don't talk much means I'm stupid? I know it was you who signed me up, he snapped. Thanks for reminding me why I don't trust anyone, he said, and I realized I had done the opposite of helping him. He wasn't coming out of his shell, he was burrowing deeper in, thanks to my interference. So, I went to the headmaster's office, rehearsing my confession in my head about how I'd pushed Lewis too far. But when I reached the door, it was already cracked open, and what I heard made me freeze in my tracks. Everything's right on schedule. The boy plays his little melancholy solo, the audience tears up, and boom, Quinlan said. 50s, no, hundreds, no, thousands of dollars fall into our laps, easy peasy, he continued, gloating. And yes, you'll get your 50% as agreed, he finished, speaking to a mysterious person on the phone. I couldn't believe my ears. He didn't want to help Lewis at all, he was just using him for profit. I realized I was just a pawn in his scheme, manipulated to exploit the one person I actually cared about. But I decided right then that I'm not a pawn, or one of those horse thingies from chess. I was going to show him who he was really messing with, a queen, just like in chess club. I sprinted to find Lewis, who was sitting alone as expected, likely brooding over my betrayal. "Lewis," I called out, breathless from running, trying to get his attention before it was too late. "What do you want?" he asked coldly, not even looking up at me from where he sat. "Well, first off, to apologize, I never should have signed you up for the gala," I admitted. "But honestly, I swear to you, I only wanted to help," I pleaded, desperate for him to believe me. "I didn't ask for help. Why does everyone keep trying to fix me?" he snapped back. "What if I'm not broken? What if I just want to be left alone?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You have every right to feel that way," I validated him, stepping closer to bridge the gap. "Then why are you here?" he demanded, finally looking at me with hurt eyes. "Because something's not right," I overheard Headmaster Quinland on the phone, I explained urgently. "He's not trying to help you. He's using you because the gala is just a cash grab," I revealed. "Your solo is the tearjerker, that's the plan, you suffer, and they get paid," I said, watching his reaction. I expected him to explode, the way I was about to, but to my surprise, he didn't get angry. I guess he was too broken to even react, simply saying, "Of course, that tracks. I thought I was pushing you towards something good, but I got so caught up in juggling my own problems," I confessed. "I was trying to do the right thing, but I guess I never asked what you wanted," I finished softly.
Yeah.
"But no one ever does," he replied, looking down at his hands. "I'm so sorry, Lewis. You know, when I first met you, something clicked in me," I said. "And I played something different," he interrupted, recalling our moment in the loft. "What do you mean? Can I hear it?" I asked gently, sensing a shift in the air. He didn't say a word, but the way he looked at me hit me harder than any note ever could. "No audience, no gala, just me, I promise," I assured him, holding his gaze. To my surprise, he picked up his violin, and I braced myself for another emotional gut punch. But what came out wasn't heavy or sad, it was light, airy, and full of life. Suddenly, so was I. I was grinning like an idiot, flooded with the kind of hope I hadn't felt in years. It felt like before I got kicked out of my first fancy school, back when I still believed the world could change. Through my joy, I blurted out, "Lewis, oh, you hated it, huh?" Seeing his expression change. "Hated it? I've never felt so amazing in my life," he said, a genuine smile breaking through. "Look, I know I can't get you out of performing anymore, but that doesn't mean you have to fall into their trap," he said. "If you played like that, you'll be making people feel good, including yourself," I realized aloud. He gave me the smallest smile and left without a word, but I could tell something was shifting in him. On the night of the gala, I had no clue what to expect as I entered the grand hall. Either the one person I cared about gets exploited, or he goes off script and reclaims his story. Going off script meant I was probably getting expelled again, but it felt worth it. Just when I thought my bundle of nerves couldn't get more twisted, I spotted them in the audience, my parents. "Guys? What are you doing here?" I asked, horrified to see them standing there. "Layla, look at you, still enrolled, how nice, come sit, we saved you a seat," my mother said. "We hear you're close with tonight's little prodigy," my father added, looking expectant. If getting expelled was my worst-case scenario, then watching my parents' live reaction to it was the apocalypse. As Lewis made his way onto the stage, he looked unchanged in a way that made me sad. It was like the spotlight was too hot and had shriveled him back into the broken boy they all expected. Sure enough, a sad melody followed suit, filling the room with heavy, melancholic vibes. As I looked around, I could see the audience tearing up, dabbing eyes with expensive handkerchiefs, and sniffles filling the room everywhere. Right on cue, Headmaster Quinlan started slinking between rows, smiling greedily and collecting checks like it was church collection time. As I watched Lewis crumble under the pressure of the spotlight, I expected, as always, for my body to move before my mind had a chance to think. But for once, I paused, realizing it was my decision now. I could sit there and be the good girl everyone wanted me to be. Or I could stand up and be me, the girl who disrupts the silence to save someone she cares about. Consequences be damned. "You're amazing, Lewis. I believe in you," I screamed at the top of my lungs, standing up on my chair to be seen. Lewis froze mid-note as the wealthiest people in the country turned to stare me down with shock and disapproval. I still stood firm on the chair, ignoring their glares, keeping my eyes locked on Lewis, beaming encouragement at him. And then, like he just remembered who he was, Lewis's lips twitched into a smile, breaking the spell of sadness. Suddenly, the music changed. It became lighter, happier, shifting from a funeral dirge to a vibrant dance. The audience forgot all about me. In fact, they actually started tapping their feet and then spontaneously dancing in the aisles. Headmaster Quinlan's donations became an afterthought as checks were left forgotten on tables in favor of the infectious music. Just as I was ready to start joining the dancing, my father grabbed my arm tightly and hissed, "Isla, what have you done?" "Huh? What do you mean?" I asked, pulling back, confused by his anger amidst the joy filling the room. "The donations are stopping. Do you know what that means for the company?" he demanded, his face red with fury. "This was supposed to be a proof of concept for investors, for our latest tech, emotional music activation," he revealed. "You've ruined it. Make it stop," he shouted over the music, and it finally dawned on me what was happening. The mysterious person on the other side of the phone call with the headmaster earlier was my father all along. But I stammered, looking between him and the headmaster, realizing the betrayal went deeper than I thought. "How do you think you got into the school in the first place? You had one task," he yelled, shaking my arm. Now we'll never be able to convince the board to make you CEO, he spat out, revealing his only priority was the business. No, wait. I can. I started to apologize out of habit, but I couldn't finish the sentence as I looked at the stage. I looked up at Lewis and saw something I almost never saw in myself or anyone else at these events: true joy. And then I remembered what he'd said to me in the hallway: no one ever asks what I want. Did I even want to be the CEO of some big tech company? I realized the answer was a resounding no. If Lewis could find his voice and reclaim his moment, then maybe I could too, right here and now. You know what? Fine. Find another CEO, I told my father firmly, ripping my arm away from his grip. Isla, you don't mean that, he said, blinking in shock as if I spoke a foreign language. Stop telling me what I mean, I snapped back, standing taller than him for the first time in my life. I don't want to be the CEO of a drizzy tech. I want to work on something that helps people, not manipulate them, I declared. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some dancing to do, I said, turning my back on him and walking toward the stage. I felt more alive than I ever had, moving through the crowd of dancing elites who had lost their composure. For a second, Lewis looked up at me while playing, and our eyes locked across the room with a shared victory. I didn't know what the future held, or what school I'd end up in next, but I knew one thing for sure. Unlike so much in our lives, we'd earned this moment of pure happiness, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, I was called into the headmaster's office, and I was rehearsing my speech to talk my way out of expulsion. But I walked in to find Headmaster Quinland looking ashamed, staring at his desk, looking smaller than usual. You're not being expelled, he mumbled without looking up, his confident facade completely gone. I blinked in surprise, but your parents said if you wanted to transfer to any school of your choice, they'd support it. I didn't know what shocked me anymore, that I was still enrolled, or that they actually cared about what I wanted. Maybe for once, they were trying to be parents instead of CEOs, or maybe they just realized they couldn't control me. Thanks, but I think I'll stay here. I hear there's a social activism club that may need some help, I smiled. I walked out of the office towards Lewis, who was waiting for me down the hallway, looking much happier. Still enrolled? He asked, leaning against the wall with a newfound confidence. Shocking, I know, I replied with a laugh, swinging my backpack over my shoulder. You were kind of amazing last night, he said, looking at me with admiration and a soft smile. Kind of? Wow. Stop, I'm blushing, I teased him, nudging his arm playfully. He suddenly stopped walking and looked at me, more sure of himself than ever before. I'm really glad you followed me, he said softly, referring to the mission that started it all.
Yeah.
Me too, I replied, realizing I didn't need a mission to save someone. I just needed to stop chasing who I was supposed to be and finally start choosing who I wanted to be. And maybe, for the first time in forever, that was enough.